Now that you've got your batteries in the car, they're mounted in place, they're all cabled together, you're going to have some way to recharge them. So we're going to need a charger for the car. Now, you might be used to your typical 12-volt chargers. We need something like that, only at a higher voltage, whatever the system voltage of the car is. For example, right now in the car, I have 6 12-volt batteries for a 72-volt system. So we're going to either need a charger that's designed specifically for 72 volts or one with variable voltage that can be set to 72 volts. Right here is a 72-volt charger. I bought this used on eBay for $200. All these chargers are going to look like just a big metal box. They're really not going to be anything more fancy than that from the outside. This one has a on-off switch on it, a couple of indicator lights to show if you're at low, medium, high, or completely charged, and a couple of lights to indicate if there's any sort of an error or fault. On the other end, we have a big connector for our AC power in. We've got a quick disconnect for the DC output. That goes out to your batteries. The one connection is going to go to the most positive end of your battery pack, and the other is going to go to the most negative end of your battery pack. Also on here, you can see there's a cooling fan. Battery chargers are going to make some heat when they're running, so you do want to keep that in mind, particularly if you live in a very hot part of the country. You don't want any electronics, including your charger, overheating. Another neat feature on this one is these two little wires output 120 volts EC when this is plugged in, and we're actually going to exploit that later when we look at the balance of the system components. But where are we going to put that charging plug? How about right here? That's right, we're going to reuse the old gas cap and cover since we're not using a gasoline system anymore. When we took out the gas tank, we also took out the filler neck. Here's the charging port on the car. This is a Marineco connection. This is something you can get at any boat store. It's designed to be, it's got a waterproof cover on there, which we pull back. And then you can see underneath there is a male connection. And that's really the exact same thing that's on the end of an extension cord. So another way to do this is you could just cut up a piece of extension cord and hang it in there. Now all I did was I cut a piece of scrap sheet metal that fit the back of this. I mounted that connector onto it and ran 3 screws into that piece of sheet metal to hold it in there. I also used a little bit of caulk in the back just to make sure everything's nice and snug and waterproof. Now coming down from that port, keep in mind that has electrical wires inside of it, and I wanted to protect those. So I made sure that those were inside a flexible conduit to go inside the car. So coming down from the back of the charging port is a flexible conduit. This is running on the outside of the car but tucked away up underneath. This goes towards the back bumper, and then it goes inside the spare tire well through a hole that I drilled in the sheet metal. Now in the back of the car, under the cargo compartment, is the spare tire wheel well. And what I did on this project is I'm simply not carrying a spare tire. I usually use this car for short trips around town. If I got a flat tire, it would not be a big deal to call up my wife to pick me up, and I would grab my spare tire from home. It's a little bit of a jumble back under here right now, and that's just because I've got a few things moved around to make it a little easier to show. To start off with, the power from the connection under the gas cap has to go to the battery charger. Now you could have it permanently hardwired into there, but I chose to do something a little bit different than that. I put in an electric outlet. This is an electric outlet that I installed in the back of the car. So really all this is the back end of an extension cord made out of a section of cable, this electric outlet, and then on the other end that bass boat charging connector. What I like about this outlet is that it has a GFI built right into it. That's what these little buttons are for right here. It's for the testing and resetting the GFI. What a GFI does is, in case there's any sort of problems with water or some other reason that the AC electricity is being conducted improperly, the GFI will kick in and cut off the power. Keep in mind, cars are used outside. I usually charge up at night. A lot of times it rains at night. I just didn't want for there to be any worries at all, so I've got this GFI in there. This is the battery charger that I'm actually using in the car. It's a K&W battery charger model BC-20. What I like about this is that this charger is variable voltage. You'll notice that Many of the screws on the cover are removed right now. That's because I was just doing some work on adjusting that. You pull out a small resistor and you replace it with one of the appropriate size to change the system voltage on this. So on this car, I could charge anywhere from a 72 to 108 volt system with this charger. Also on this charger, it has an AC circuit breaker, a DC fuse, and its own built-in GFI. Right here we have an ammeter, so we can see in amps how much power is going out to the batteries. Then we also have a power indicator and potentiometers to adjust both current and voltage. Most battery chargers are going to have some sort of at least a minimal adjustment on them, whether it's with potentiometers or on the higher end it might be with dip switches or computer programming. And I'm going to plug the battery charger in so we can see what it does. Right away we hear the fan come on and the ammeter jumps up. Now where the ammeter is going to depend on the voltage and the current settings. Typically I leave the current in about the middle position, and I have the voltage turned down just a little bit from what it could be. Remember I said that with those gel cell batteries, they can't be charged at too high of a voltage. So I used a multimeter to check what the output of the battery charger is on some different settings, and I just leave that voltage setting where it's supposed to be for my batteries. Now if I went somewhere that maybe they had bad power, they just didn't have a very large circuit, I could always take this current, turn it down a little bit, and it would pull less power from the wall and reduce the chances of blowing a circuit breaker. Also keep in mind that you're probably going to want to have a dedicated extension cord just for your car. This is going to be a shorter, stouter gauge cable. For example, this is the one that I use. This is a 25 footer, 12 gauge, 10 gauge would be even better. Another thing that I like about it is that it has a little light built into the end, so when you're plugged into power, you can see as an indicator that you're in. That way when I plug this in, this side faces my house, and even at night with my car parked in the driveway charging, I can look out the window and I can see the glowing orange that I've got power going to the car, that I haven't blown a breaker or that the GFI hasn't gone off, anything like that, so I know my car's charging up. Now another way you could go, instead of having one big battery charger that charges all of your batteries at once in series, you could instead have a bunch of individual chargers. Each battery would have its own 12 or 6 volt battery charger right there. It just goes just to that battery. What works really nice about this is, let's say you have one battery that's not as good as another, they're different ages, something where there's any differences between the batteries. The individual battery chargers will make sure that each battery is charged just the way that that battery wants to be. Also, if you have a setup where you're able to accept a range of voltages on your electric car, if you wanted to add more batteries later, you'd be able to do that, and you would just add a charger with each battery as you go. That way it would make your system a little bit easier to expand as well.